How many of you have suffered what you would consider trauma through the St. Louis County court system or other Missouri court system? How many of you have had experience with the guardian ad litem named Elaine Pudlowski? 3 of you. How many of you have had Sarah Pleben on your case? And there are 3 people off camera who do not want to be on camera because of intimidation and retaliation. I just want to state that for the record. So Sue and Megan, you two are mom and daughter, and Megan, you told your story recently. You're the only child here who is now an adult who went through this situation in St. Louis County. So again, remind me, who was your judge?
For the last round, it was Judge Hemphill.
Okay, and
prior to that, it was Judge Smith.
And who were the guardians in your case?
We've had 3 guardians: Bruce Hilton 2 times, Brian Dunlop, and the last round was Marquise Water.
Do those names ring a bell for anybody else in this room? 4 of you. KRISTIN, who do you recognize from that group?
Brian Dunlop. In fact, Megan did a really good job of describing him as the arrogant man that he is, yes.
So I was told that these people would represent me and they had my best interest in mind. So when I told them my truth, they would tell me, or rather they would just flat face say, okay, and then in court they would not represent what I said. They would lie about what I said, lie about my feelings of safety with my father, and they would feel no sympathy, no empathy. They were more like robots and seemed very arrogant and condescending to what I had to say. Maybe because I was a child and they were on their high horse, but either way, they didn't care what I had to say.
Brian Dunlop was assigned to my case probably 6 months before I even met him. He never made any effort to reach out to contact me, to meet me. It wasn't until I got my second attorney who said, oh, you need to pay him right away and make an appointment with him. And she also told me not to bring anyone with me.
Wait, you had to pay him before you could get an appointment with him?
That's how it seemed.
How much?
That was her. I think the first payment I made to him was around $375 maybe for the first payment.
That was to get in the door.
That was just to get in the door, yeah.
And she said, don't bring anybody with you. He doesn't like that. But I disregarded that and brought my mom with me. But I later realized he doesn't like witnesses to his BS behavior, if I say it nicely. His first words out of his mouth to me when I sat down with him were, you lost your case, so now what? And at that point, because of my first attorney, I had no idea what he was talking about. As far as I knew, my case was still going to be seen by a judge for the motion to modify, which I had put in. And then he proceeded to tell me completely the opposite of what any children's division worker or any child psychologist had told me, which is a child at my daughter's age, which was 2.5 at the time, wouldn't make these statements, and they're too young to fabricate a lie like that.
So your child disclosed allegations of abuse?
Yes.
Against her father?
Yes.
And were they sexual allegations?
Yes.
And she disclosed to who?
Well, she disclosed to me initially. Then her first therapist, which we got her into immediately, she disclosed to her. She disclosed to a second therapist later, and then also to a school teacher. And that was the last hotline that was made, was her school teacher.
Were any of the hotline calls, did they come back substantiated from DFS?
None of them. In fact, CFS or CPS in Missouri, they told me that we would not substantiate solely based on her word without physical evidence, because at that point it's the child's word against the father.
How many of you here had allegations of child sexual abuse in your cases? Wow. Okay. And were any of you listened to?
I was punished.
Yeah.
You were punished.
Well, first of all, my whole situation was messed up. The GAL, when you were telling your story, that was very, it just reminded me of my situation, because I remember driving in Clayton, and my child told me when they were on my visit, I've been there before, and I knew where my child was pointing. And I was like, well, when did you go there? With Daddy. And that was the GAL's office off of Bingston, 210, I believe, South Bingston in Clayton. And I've seen this GAL because the father was finally arrested in my situation concerning one of my children. And it just, when I saw him, it just disturbed me because my whole life has changed because of that. But throwing money around, people telling me if I would pay, and I mean, actually, this GAL, when I first met him, he told me that he's going to call my character references. Then I remember a time after that, I called my friends and everyone, and they were telling me no one ever called them, because he told me he's just going to tell the judge that the father is the better parent.
Who is your guardian?
Nathan Cohen.
So because of Nathan Cohen and his actions in your case, your son was put into mortal danger. Is that correct?
My child is dead. My child is dead. My child had a rare genetic disorder called citrullinemia. So without medication and a special diet, he would die in like 24 to 48 hours. They knew all of this, but they allowed this tug of war to take place. And it was, and like Judge Thomas J. Frawley, he's the judge that allowed all of this to transpire in his courtroom. Karen Coble was the deputy juvenile officer. So it's like all of them conspired. It was like, if you don't do what they say, they'll make it hard for you.
Yeah.
How many of you got a statement like that from a member of the court that if you don't do this, you will lose your children? Everyone is raising their hand except, yeah.
It wasn't a verbal thing, but it was definitely actionable. Do it the way we say to do it, and if you don't, then we take your child. And then that's exactly what they did. That's exactly what they did.
One of the first things that happened, that like when it was like September 13th, 1998, barbiturates were found in my child Christian's system. Christian has been missing 18 years this June. Still, we don't know where his body is. But anyway, barbiturates were found. The father was saying that there was something strange going on with him, and it was time for me, the visit to be over. So he wanted to just put him on me. And my ex-husband was like, "Nuh-uh, tell him to meet you at the hospital." And I'm so glad I did, because they found barbiturates in his system. So he was exchanged directly into the hospital's care. I was there, but they really received him, and I asked them to test him, and they did a quick test, and it came back barbiturates detected. Panic.
Did they make a hotline call?
No, I did. But the judge went into court and said that he wound up going against the Beecham or whatever. He was saying that it was wrong. He went in and advocated for the father. I'm like, you're supposed to advocate for the children, yeah. Because I alleged abuse and neglect. So it's like I felt real bad because I introduced him to my case. I didn't pick him, because I didn't know. All I know is he did this. I made a holler, and I made these accusations. And they brought him in, and he destroyed the lives of my whole family. Did
he appoint a psychologist to your case?
Well, I had to get it examined, and my child. And, of course, my child was showing some signs of some things happening. A lot was happening. And they told me, the female psychologist that saw me, she said, well, she's very smart, but we think she's faking good. Put that in parentheses. The truth shall set you free, they say. My life is forever changed.
Anybody here have falsified court documents in their cases?
Well, falsified documents can be excluding documents that don't go into their agenda or their perpetration of the narrative. And so the first DFS, or Division of Family Services, document I received in my case when I was 2 hours away from my children, so it's not like it could be coached or that I was there and they were in fear of their lives. They were actually with my mother. They said that their father was the loving parent and that their mother was the combative, conflictual, high conflict, out of control parent, and that their father was loved. That DFS report got tossed for other reports that substantiated that I hit my child in the head on a Sunday night with a baseball bat. Yes, she was at school on Monday. The second one was that I pistol whooped her with a pistol, and she was also at school the next day. And those were unsubstantiated reports, but those were also used as evidence or falsified documents to say that I was some type of an abusive parent. So they pick and choose which paperwork that they want to use against you.
Yes.
I have one. I'm sorry.
No, they create and embellish.
They create whichever narrative makes them the most money or fits their agenda.
Exactly. Exactly.
My GAL in court, when he was cross-examining me, accused me and said, your daughter is the only person that she told about the abuse, which was a complete lie. There were 3 other hotline calls made from 3 other people besides me.
This is a
Who else
very.
has had that?
Who else has had that same thing? I know Caroline, Melissa, Avita.
Yes.
Okay, in Caroline's case, tell us how many therapists your child disclosed to, and how many people, not just therapists.
Oh my gosh, like probably 5 easily. I mean, we have 2 CAC forensics, and then for sure 3 other therapists, and me, that would be 6. For sure, and a teacher, so that's 7. Oh no. Pediatrician was 8.
And what happened when the therapist came in?
Well, anything that was hotline was filed as already investigated, unsubstantiated.
Yeah, got a lot of that.
Anything that was hotlined, once there was a substantiated report, it was overturned at the Child Abuse Review Board by a paid expert to unsubstantiate that substantiated report.
What's
And
a child abuse
review board?
board?
That is the one avenue that an alleged abuser can fight the allegations. And so then there was a woman named Dr. Andel Duncan-Hively that was paid $5,400 for the sole purpose of presenting at that Child Abuse Review Board in order to solely overturn that substantiated report, in which she succeeded.
And did Dr. Duncan do the same thing as the guardian ad litem
Did Dr. Duncan-
in Kristen's case, claiming that your daughter only disclosed to you?
Oh, yes. So in the deposition, we deposed her obviously afterwards, and my attorney at the time had asked her, is it true that you stated to the review board that this child only disclosed to mom when she disclosed to, and she named several other people, and the woman agreed that she disclosed to these other people and said, I should have used the word primary.
Wow.
That makes a big difference because they use mom's the only one making the hotline calls to
Correct.
make it
So
sound like
Right.
you're nuts.
Correct.
Melissa-
Yeah.
So that's how they flipped the script, right? So mom made all the phone
Okay, so
calls.
in your case, it was at least 7 professionals who your child disclosed to. KRISTIN,
I had 2 professionals. She also disclosed to the children's division worker on her last interview and at her forensic interview as well.
so that's
She
4
disclosed
times at
4,
least.
Yeah, to 4.
Mary Coley, the DFS person, like when my child was molested, that they told me what happened. I called DFS, so she knew Children's Advocacy Center because I told her I'm calling Children's Advocacy Center. They set up a forensic interview, so whoever came in to do the forensic interview, they knew about it. And the GAL knew because we had to go into court because the father filed a motion to amend a new trial, and that resulted in them taking my children from me before the forensic interview and putting them in the perpetrator's care, who's now in jail.
Melissa, how many times did your daughter disclose and to
12
who?
that I know of.
12 times or different people?
12 different people.
Including police?
That's, yes, including police, two different counties of police, 2 children's division, CAC. counselor.
Can I, of the Children's Division people, I'm sure you remember some of these people's names. Can
Yes.
we say them out loud so we know if there's any of the same people at the Children's Division who are not taking these reports seriously?
Jim Schrader.
Jim Schrader, I've heard that one before. Anybody else have Schrader?
I honestly can't remember who mine were. I do know that the reports that they needed, the guy's name was Jim, but he was from like the Piedmont area. The one that I needed actually, that said I was a loving, good dad and mom was the conflict. He was from the Piedmont area and his was kicked. And then the supervisor for the St. Louis County Division of Family Services was the one that they used, even though both reports were unsubstantiated. So this isn't just
Who was the supervisor's name?
Joanne Shelton.
Joanne Shelton.
So it's not just like it's a peon that just got a 24-hour phone call. It's an actual supervisor that's supposed to be educated in these matters, and that's the report they use.
And then Tom Robinson and Joanne Shelton sign off on each one.
Yeah, I started writing down the names, but I know one DFS worker, she got off the case or had to be removed due to a conflict of interest because of something she had going on allegedly with the father, and it was just a mess. Her last name was G-E-E, I believe, or either G-H-E-E. But Tina Thompson, who was over DFS in the city, refused to give me my papers whenever I went to ask for my papers. Then years later, they gave me some, and that's why I'm able to go through now and write down all of the DFS workers.
You didn't have to go for a net house?
No, I don't know who that is. So
Just
no.
curious.
But I was high profile then, and they saw me on TV advocating for my situation,
yeah,
so they would probably
of course.
get her out of here.
They'll
By
shut
that
you.
time.
Yeah, that's okay.
Mine were all in Greene County. I will say that my CVS worker, the last one that my daughter disclosed to, you could tell it upset her that she couldn't substantiate the report. She did a good job of documenting everything. But one thing that I think is significant to note is that we could never find a police report for St. Louis.
Oh, I forgot to say the police, they suppressed some truth too.
So wait, you know that the police report was created?
There was a police report created where I live, which is in Greene County, and I have a copy of that police report. But we could never find a copy of the police report in St. Louis.
Why would they have it if it was in Greene County?
Well, they transfer the case to St. Louis because the St. Louis is where the criminal act happened.
And they're supposed to put a copy of the police report in that case
Well,
file?
they would have had to do their own investigation up here. My attorney hasn't found one, and she's been looking as well. So,
Caroline, how did the police treat your case?
I don't know what you mean by that.
Did it lead to an arrest?
Both times after a forensic interview, each time was submitted to the prosecuting attorney's office. So one was submitted to St. Louis City, and then the other one was submitted in St. Louis County, depending on where the act actually took place. And
So-
both prosecuting attorney's office declined moving forward with charges.
Franklin County prosecutor did as well.
Yeah.
How
They
many?
typically do unless there's
How many
physical
people
evidence.
here had abuse allegations that went for prosecution and the prosecutor declined to do their job?
And Melissa, you don't know yet.
I don't know yet. That's right.
Okay, so let's talk about what's happening in your case, Melissa. Would you explain what is going on currently?
I actually just wanted to touch base because she had mentioned something about the Child Abuse and Neglect Review Board earlier. Opposing counsel on my case has chair on the board for Child Abuse and Neglect Review for the state of Missouri.
And
Who's
who
opposing
is that
counsel?
opposing counsel?
Ryan Monroe. September, my daughter revealed on an in-phone counseling session to her therapist that her father had raped her twice. Obviously, DFS was hotlined. I allowed them to make an investigation. I kind of trusted the process, was waiting on them to schedule what's called a CAC forensic interview. That didn't happen. At that time, I didn't have any family court orders, so no temporary custody or visitation orders at that time. But the last order on the case expired and we had not been back to court yet. So Had no problem. I'm thinking the next time we go into court, it's not going to be a big deal. They're going to be like, there's a pending investigation with Children's Division, Jefferson County Sheriff's Department, because that's where the criminal act happened. So we get into court and the judge continues it, and 5 days later I get hit with a temporary restraining order based on educational neglect because my children had not been attending school in person. We had no in-person schooling at that time. So that was dismissed. At that custody exchange, my daughter once again disclosed abuse allegations to St. Louis City police officers. They made a report. They also hotlined it. We go back home. 6 days later, I get a TRO without notice on my front doorstep. My children were forcefully removed from my care and my home. My children were told that if they don't come, even though they just told these police officers about the abuse that occurred, and it's all on video, that if they don't come, mom's going to jail and it's going to be that much harder for mom to get you back.
Yes.
So
That's a
my
big deal.
children were bullied, badgered, lied to by St. Louis City Police. My children were actually physically outside on the doorstep. I came into my home to call a supervisor, a sergeant, a lieutenant, anything. And they pushed their way into my house and grabbed me. First of all, what are you doing inside of my house?
Did they have a warrant for that?
No, they had a temporary restraining order. I was
Just like
inside
they
of my
wouldn't be able to come in
home.
your house?
They're there to get the children. The children are on the steps outside with them. What are you doing in my home? So, like, I thought, well, this is going to be no-brainer. No judge is going, once I get back into court, no judge is going to, once they find out about the Children's Division investigation
Right.
and the criminal investigation, that they're going to give me my kids back. No, I'm accused of parent alienation. In my temporary restraining order, it says, mother has produced no evidence to the court other than her bald accusations. Okay?
That's very true.
What
I
about
have
the
no
police?
evidence
Wait a
to
minute,
produce.
Melissa, we produced the police reports, we published them, there's police reports.
This
Those
is,
weren't out yet.
those
But
weren't out yet.
what did the court
Oh
do
my
after
God.
those police reports came out?
Nothing.
So they
I
still
have a
acting up.
90-day no contact restraining order that
Who
That-
wrote that, who signed it, what judge?
Judge Lay, Virginia Lay.
How long has it been since you've
Um,
seen your kids?
I have not seen my kids in 156 days.
Wait a minute, that's more than 90 days.
Absolutely.
What
it is.
happened?
My restraining order expired February 12th of this year.
And
I don't know.
Right. Who's the guardian ad litem on your case?
Molly Murphy.
What does she say about all the days you're missing?
Molly Murphy is still pushing 50-50 joint legal and joint physical custody.
Megan, I'm sorry, Theda, 1 second. I saw your face, Megan, and I wanted to ask you, hearing the story about the police coming to the door, you have memories of similar things happening to you? Did that sound familiar to you?
Yeah, so, long story short, my dad told me to come home at a certain time. He misremembered whenever he told me to come home. I came home at the right time. When I got home, he had called the police, the Eureka police, and was looking for me. And so this happened before, and I knew what happened before, so I called my mom, and she called the Eureka police to come to the house for my safety. And my dad got home, and he was shouting at me in the corner. He put me into a corner, was shouting at me. And then, sorry.
It's okay.
It's all right, honey.
It's all right. He raised his fist and was about to hit me. And then I peed myself and ran to the bathroom. But when the police got there, they didn't care. So I begged them, told me to go with my mom. And I said no because she would go to jail if I left with her. So I stayed at my dad's house and he forced me to unhang probably 200 coats and then rehang them and put them back in his closet.
From my perspective, when Megan called me, and she was really scared, and she was saying, Dad's going to be really mad at me, I didn't come home, I came home when I should have, and then she's like, oh no, he's here now, and she hung up the phone. So I was like 40 minutes away, and I immediately called the police to go over for her safety, and I drove. And when I got to the house, the policeman was there. And he spoke to me and said that he knew that her father was scaring her, but he couldn't do a thing about it. So I went to the door so I could talk to Megan and her younger brother CJ, and she was crying hysterically, and I couldn't take her. So fast forward to the next time we were in court, excuse me, my attorney had subpoenaed that policeman. And when the policeman showed up, he told my lawyer that I'm not going to testify as to what I said. I'm going to say nothing.
Do you know who the officer was?
No, but if I go and try to dig up some records, I could probably figure it out.
It's very strange that that's the same police department that's whooped my ass 3 times for restraining order violations and things that weren't substantiated.
Are you talking about the Eureka Police
Eureka,
Department?
Missouri.
How interesting is that?
I'd like to mention that,
Like, banged my head off the side of a truck when they served me a restraining order that hadn't been instituted. They showed up, Mom showed up at dinner. We were there 8 minutes as I'm getting slammed off the ground in front of my family, my 6 kids, and everyone else. So it's very interesting that you bring those guys up.
Yes,
I wanted to bring up something else. My dad was a domestic abuser to any wives or girlfriends he had. And unfortunately, one of the policewomen that came to our house on many occasions was a Girl Scout's mother that I was in Girl Scouts with. And so she knew that at the very least my father was a domestic abuser physically, and that she had gone to my house and seen me in school, but she wouldn't help me. She wouldn't connect the dots that maybe he was abusing his children if he was abusing his girlfriends.
Is her name Laura Beiser?
Do you know her last name? Addison is her daughter, but I cannot remember her last name.
That's her.
Are you serious?
really.
Interesting.
Interesting, isn't it?
Who else was accused of parental alienation?
And there are hands up that you can't see as well.
My daughter was
And
taken
then-
on a TRO as well.
And how many of you, the kids, alleged abuse? And
Same
so was
number.
the accusation of parental alienation that you were coaching them?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm gonna skip to Megan real quick here. So you were asked, right, if you were being coached?
Yeah, by Brian Dunlap and Marquise Water, and I told them no. And they did not listen. They lied about what I said. They just assumed that because I was speaking out against my dad that about the same things my mom was, because I would tell her in confidence about what was happening, that somehow she was coaching me and feeding me all these words to use.
No, nobody asked me if, you know, if they were being coached by him,
Oh,
right?
no.
Everybody's
Yeah.
curious about me coaching, but not him coaching,
Exactly,
Right.
exactly.
right?
With my experience with Dunlop, he openly admitted when the first time I met him, oh, well, I went to your daughter's father's house while she was there and spent time talking with him and his family. They seemed very nice. And he hadn't even once made an effort to get to know me or come visit me when my daughter was with me.
Yes,
Nothing.
exactly.
Megan, you
Yeah.
had said that Brian Dunlop was very buddy-buddy with your dad. You saw this happen in front of you, right?
Yeah, so he would come to my father's house, and my father could hear us talking, because the house was not very big. And I don't know why he wouldn't take us outside, but he decided to go into my bedroom. And I want to mention that I was severely malnourished. I was 50 or 60 pounds at the age of 10. That is not how much I should weigh. And I said this before, but if he had opened the cabinets or looked in the fridge, he would see that there was no food. He would look at my body and see that I was literally skin and bones. But I guess he didn't observe that. And so when I would have to tell him things and be 100% confident, my father was listening in on it. So I don't really know any child who would be confident telling an authority figure the truth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When he's going to leave you in the house
Right.
with...
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Theta, you
Yeah, I
wanted
had
to
a
say
couple-
something.
I had a couple of questions about, like, her stuff is going into my criminal, so I'm not even going to touch that. but I understand. And both of my I wish I would have brought my surviving child. But I have a question about reunification and the exchange facilities. If other people have been forced into a joint custody decision and then made to pay to see your children at an exchange facility where the GAL is on the board.
Oh
I'm
my.
just saying.
Oh, no. I
And then if you
What?
can't pay, we can get some United Way agency money.
Right. Ken,
What
you have something
facility?
similar?
What facility? Wait, what
It
facility?
was through Providence Counseling, but it was called Heritage House. And I was told at one point Judge Thomas J. Frawley had something to do with that too. But I definitely have all my paperwork and then listed in the column Nathan Cohen on there. So Barb Flory was running it. She was so abusive. The police would see people getting attacked in there. It's supposed to be a safe facility, but people still were being attacked in there. And like my child was having a medical crisis and peed on themselves, but they still would try to bring them in to exchange them. I was like, call the hospital right now. So it was just like, it was like it was a money. You just had to follow the money. You had to follow.
Ken, you had something similar?
Yeah, so when my counselors that I wasn't in voluntary servitude to, that the courts picked from the GALs getting involved, were assigned to the case, you're forced to go to these guys for reunification counseling. Well, I wasn't unreunified before you guys took my children away from me. I'd actually seen them every other week, 7 days in a row, and had them full time for 10 months. Before allegations of abuse started coming out. Then once the custody situation got involved to where higher price lawyers got involved, then it got really nasty to where I had to go to reunification counseling and things of that nature. So I understand having to pay to see your own children from people that don't care. And then when you subpoena those records for, I mean, you're the counselor, right? You're the counselor. So the children came and talked to you. I didn't ask for the children to be put up there. I asked for the counselor to testify. What are the children saying? I asked for Elaine Pudlowski to testify. What are the children saying? I was blocked by a writ order from the judge from having witnesses at a trial, which is the fundamentals of the Constitution of the United States.
And your judge again?
Mary Brumgarger Schrader.
Is she related to Jim Schrader?
I don't know who she's related to, so.
It's probably right.
But they told me about my, they made me go through reunification classes, I guess. But the people told me, we don't have anything for you to do because you've not done anything. But I still have to keep going to these classes and listening to this
You
crap.
have to pay for them?
I don't know, because
Somebody was paying for them.
yeah, because I didn't have money back then. But it was just crazy because my dad is deceased now, but I looked at my paperwork, I see all the people who came. I think one of the DFS people then was, her name was Angela Blakely, Shirley Stevenson, I believe her name is. The same church at one point in time. It just really bothered me that you saying you're a Christian, you up in this church, but you not telling the truth about the seriousness of this situation. Now my child's missing. When you're going through the process and you're walking the line and you're doing everything you're supposed to do and you're still being punished, I saw this book called The Myth of Moral Justice at one of my jobs, and I even called that author because I was telling them what I was going through. I couldn't believe that, I grew up Catholic, and you see the collar and you see the priest or you see the ministers, and you're thinking, well, they say they tell the truth. And that's what matters, but that's not what holds up in court. The court does not care about what is true or what is just. But there's so much, and I'm not saying this, this is a generalization, but this is my reality. And it sounds like it's the reality of a lot of people in here.
So the best way to sum it up is through the therapists, through the GALs, through the family courts. They keep the target moving, and you can never achieve what they're asking in order for you to be seen as the fit or willing parent, as long as the other parent is causing the high conflict. The goalposts keep moving, and you go do reunification counseling, and you pay this money, And then all of a sudden there's a new order and you have to go do this and then you have to go jump through these hoops like a circus monkey.
Yeah.
Ken,
Yes,
you
yes.
you have other children, right?
I do.
Does anyone accuse you of being an unfit parent with any of the other children?
So I have 6 children. 2 are adopted. The 2 oldest ones are one is a state highway patrolman, one is slotted to be an MD at 23. The mother and I get along well to this day. We could still go have a brew together.
Mhm.
The younger 2, they're both in private schools. They're very well-rounded children. So if 6 kids have the same father, we might want to look at why the 2 in the middle have an issue, not the father.
Right. So no one's accusing you of being an unfit parent with any of the other 4?
Not ever. I've raised 4 perfectly fine children, and the other 2 are fine. They just have mental trauma and emotions. My daughter graduated with a 1.01 GPA. I mean, you have to be mentally incompetent to get that low of a GPA. And my son has behavioral issues from getting kicked out of school because he has anger issues, because he's lashing out at a system that removed his parent, because I never could jump through enough hoops. I couldn't make the circus dog bark and speak the right way. So I got 36 hours, which is well below every other weekend that most parents get.
I have 6 kids as well, believe it or not. My oldest is 20. He's doing great. Then I have my twins that are 14-year-old. They're the kids that are the focus of this case. Then I have 3 younger children. So all of my kids are with me except for my 14-year-old twins. As a matter of fact, my boy twin has autism and ADHD, sensory processing and sensory integration disorders. He's a full-time job, and he always has been. So I quit being an insurance agent when these kids were born and stayed home to raise them and do all the therapies, the speech, physical therapy, all of those. And right now they want to put my son in a full-time live-in facility. You ripped him from my home, okay? So now you can go put him in a facility? Why? I'm at home. He's my full-time job. I've gone to classes at, special school district in Clayton to learn how to parent, handle, autism spectrum disorders and, different parenting approaches, how to tap into our kids that have these. He has 156 mean IQ and he can't make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Okay? So, you ripped him away from me. And now you want to lock him up in a facility,
Because
which great.
Melissa, has his condition behavior worsened since he's been away from you?
I have
Oh,
no
let's see
idea
now.
because I've had no contact, no communication.
When did they decide that they wanted to put him in a live-in facility?
Well,
though?
this is funny that you mention it because Ann Duncan Hively is the therapist who recommended him go live, even though he's not her patient. Okay?
What? Wait a minute.
Ann Duncan
Is she a specialist in autism?
No, she is not. She is not seeing him as a patient. She's only seeing the child that makes sex abuse allegations. By the way, Ann Duncan Hively is a founding member of falseallegation.org and the National Child Abuse Defense Resource Center. Okay?
So you're saying she is a specialist in false allegations of abuse?
Yes, she
And
is.
that's,
She's an activist.
she's an activist.
Yes,
and she-
yes.
She's not a
Who
specialist.
who else has other kids besides the ones?
I do.
Does somebody, were you deemed an unfit parent for the other kids?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
There's never been a question of the other children being yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Am I the only one that was never declared unsuitable, unfit, and unable? Because no one ever told me I was unfit, unsuitable,
Yeah, I was
or
not.
unable.
I was never declared that. I just had all of my parental rights taken from me.
And I was told that I had to be declared unfit, unsuitable, and unable to have my children taken away.
No, that's actually not true because all of us have had our children taken away.
I know it's true.
We don't have a piece of paper that
That's
says
true.
we're not fit. I had children's division in and out of my door, obviously, because, of the sex abuse, investigation. They saw no problems coming in and out of my house. They saw no problems with my
And still left the
children.
younger children with you.
Oh, absolutely they did. Not to mention, Children's Division in Jefferson County also investigated. They had no issues with my children in my home and my care.
But now DFS did want to remove your children from your ex-husband under
Actually, they
an
did.
emergency order. What happened to that?
So they
After she
did.
put in her,
3 days after my husband was granted the temporary restraining order without notice, Children's Division in Jefferson County, which is where Dad lives, did a courtesy, because there's an open investigation, went and removed the children on what they call a CS-33, which is a protective custody order. They came out, Dad was not home, they interviewed the 2 children. My daughter again disclosed the rape allegations to the Children's Division worker and the Sheriff's Department deputy that was there. My son disclosed that his dad is an alcoholic, he drinks, he used to beat his older brother and his mom, and he breaks things, and he's very scared. So they removed my children and placed them, they went into 3 foster homes, and lo and behold, Children's Division wanted them to come back home to me, but they cannot trump a family court order. So my children were in 3 foster homes. Molly Murphy had every opportunity to go into the judge and request an emergency hearing to get this TRO reconsidered. She didn't do it not once. I begged her to. Just let the kids come home to me. Please, let's get them out of foster care.
Can I ask a question about that? Are they asking you for money? Like, are they saying, you know, we need another $2,500 down? Or they?
Yes.
So
They
this
are
whole time-
asking.
And are you paying?
They are asking me. No, I refuse to pay.
who wants money from you?
Molly Murphy wants guardian ad litem fees.
Oh,
How much
So-
does she want?
So she wants $5,000 in GAL fees.
Yeah.
I have been hit with a consent order, which will allow me supervised visitation, supervised phone communication once a week, and I must pay $5,000 in guardian ad litem fees. Dad, by the way, has to pay nothing.
What?
Okay, yeah.
Why?
And I refuse to sign this consent order, okay, because this changes my entire custody case.
Well,
I
wait,
don't consent for
explain,
Dad to have
explain to me,
custody.
you have to sign a consent order for what? What are you
To see my
consenting
children.
And in exchange for seeing your children, you must sign this consent order and pay.
That's correct, $5,000.
That
in
consent
GAL
order
fees.
also gives your ex the legal custody.
Yes, it does. It
Yeah.
means I am granting him legal custody of the children. I'm consenting for him to have custody, and I do not.
That's what
But
my,
you don't have a
that's what my
choice.
attorney did to me.
If
Oh,
you
yeah,
wanna
I
see your
do.
kids,
Exactly.
Yeah.
if you want to see your kids, you sign something.
And has anybody else been told that you can see your children or have more time with them if you pay something?
After I made my
1,
first
2,
payment
3,
to
4.
Pudlowski, it was the first time I got to see my son in about 7 months.
How much did you pay her for that?
Well, we paid her 15 altogether, so
15,000?
Both of you or just you?
no, both of us.
I was like, forget this. You know, the father would go to court and put down all this money because his stepfather owned a big construction company. I was on food stamps and things back in the day, so I didn't have it like that. But even though later on in the game, the man had to garnish my checks to get my money because I was like, I'm not paying you after all you've done to my children. You were supposed to protect my children. Why should I pay you to harm my children?
How much did he want?
I would have to look at my paperwork, but it was thousands of dollars, and then he tried to cancel my when my son went missing, he tried to cancel my motion that was in court while my child was missing. I'm like, what are you trying to do?
That was Nathan Cohen.
Yes, Nathan Cohen.